My name is Debbie Ali. I was born and raised in very tiny Caribbean island named Trinidad. My story is about my abduction from inside of my home on my birthday of 2006. Very weird coincidence. And what ensued was 2 weeks, 14 days and 14 nights of pure horror, trauma. At the time, both my kids were very young, 8 and 6 respectively. I was married, still married, and fortunately for them, no one else was at home at the time of the abduction. It's my birthday. I'm happy. I love Christmas. My birthday is the 5th of December, and I love cleaning and decorating, and that's what I was in the process of doing with my garage door open. Unfortunately, we were being marked by, I'm not sure if it was a gang or a select few individuals. We were being very closely watched, and they entered the garage door while I was on the phone with my mom making plans, and one was holding a gun, one was holding something like a machete. They were masked, and before I could think, the blood dropped to my toes, and the gun was at my temple, and that was it. There was no reaction time. There was just a matter of seconds. And I don't know, even today, after all of these years, I still can't fathom how I did not pick up on their presence, peripherally, that is, but I didn't. They proceeded to loot everything from my home, all the valuables. And at that time in my country, kidnappings were quite prevalent. However, like everyone else, no one thinks, oh, it's going to be me. No one thinks it's ever going to happen to them until it does. And I was taken away, wrapped in one of my drapes. They took something that was very, very valuable to me, which was a card, an SD card that contained so much footage of my kids growing up. First steps, first words, that kind of thing. Things that you really, really value as a mom. They dumped it like it was garbage, even though I begged them. I was taken away to my first, what I say, resting spot, which was essentially a dumping ground. Ended up being like maybe 6 or 7 feet deep, a hole in the ground. And what they did was they threw me into that hole. It was not lowered down. I was not eased into the hole. I was thrown like a bag of garbage. This is, of course, after having endured several beatings in the vehicle, because I was screaming and was trying to escape. I was trying to fight back the best that I could. And so I was injured in several places, my back especially, my head, my stomach, because these men were wearing steel-toed boots. In any event, I remained in that hole, just dumping grounds and with garbage and whatever else. I was made to sit there for the remainder of the day because I was taken at 10 a.m. in the morning, around 10 a.m. Obviously, I began crying from the get-go. It was tears. And of course, the only thing that came to mind was the name of Jesus, because, you're frozen in fear in that situation. You're just like, there's no help. I grew up in a very, I don't want to say sheltered, but I grew up being very spiritually, very, very spiritual minded. And so the first thing and the last thing on my mind was Jesus. Whilst in the hole in the ground, it was a rainy day. Being a tropical country, it was either sunshine or rain. So there was a thunderstorm. I was beaten, I was slapped, I was kicked for sneezing, for coughing, for crying. My back especially was very badly injured when they threw me into the hole because, of course, I was blindfolded. Later on in the day, one of the men sat in the hole with me and revealed everything he knew about my family, my husband's job, my job. I was a teacher at the time, teacher/writer. He revealed information about my 2 children, the private school they went to, the fact that my husband came back 2 days earlier from a trip that nobody knew of except me. It was supposed to be a surprise, but he knew. He also knew that we changed certain locks around the house, the back door and the side door. He knew that those locks would change. So I knew, okay, this was very well planned. Of course, threats were made against my children so that I would, be afraid and comply, which would be one of their techniques. And in the process of running through my wallet, he discovered that it was my birthday. So he promised me a birthday gift. Of course, very sarcastically, happy birthday, whatever. I thought nothing of it because I needed to use the washroom. My first boyfriend became my husband. So I had no experience with anyone else. except for my husband, my family. This was it. This was my life, work, my family, and my writing, of course, very important. And I was just told very blatantly, hey, there's nothing like that here. Just drop your pants and go. And I tried, to hold off as long as I could. When I could not, I had to do the unthinkable, which was do that, just that. I cried uncontrollably, and I thought this was so dehumanizing, so indescribable shame. But I did it, and I knew he was staring at me, like when someone's looking at you. Even though I couldn't see him, I knew he was staring at me. I did it, and he handcuffed me back, and he was just kind of snickering, and I was left in my own filth. And a little while later on, they tried to get me to eat something. Their words were, for now, just for now, we need to keep you alive until we know further. So eat, drink. I could not. They tried forcing me, and of course I threw up. Later on in that night, I was dragged out of the hole, and they had me by the hands, pulling me up on my back, up out of the hole. So everything that I hit along the way, further deteriorated the condition of my back. I was in tremendous pain. Couldn't cry about the pain either, because then I was beaten. And all the while I'm trying to figure out, why are they doing this? I suspected it was for ransom. For whatever reason, they felt that we were wealthy, possibly because of my husband's job, but we were not. As we know, whatever we earn, we invest it. There's mortgages, there's car payments, private school fees, whatever. The money goes, and it's not like we have $2 million just sitting there in a bank account. But for whatever reason, these men felt that they were entitled. They were entitled to our money, our belonging, me. They felt entitled to remove me from my baby, from my husband, from my mom. In any event, the police were less than fully functional. They did very little to try to find me. On my side, they dragged me out of the hole, and I was forced to walk uphill through some brushes and bushes and stuff like that. Of course, I'm very weak, dehydrated, traumatized. I could not hold out. So I passed out on the ground at some point. And of course, I was bare feet. During the entire scenario, I was bare feet. I was cleaning bare feet. They took me bare feet, everything. I wore no shoes. Hence the name of my book, Bare Feet. When I could walk no longer, one of them just kind of threw me over the shoulder and walked up the hill. I had no control. I tried fighting. I tried screaming and pounding on them, but these are like 6 feet plus men, and I'm barely 5 feet, right? And I was much more petite at the time. Couldn't fight because I was met with slaps and kicks and butts to the head and stuff. Eventually, I was thrown onto some sort of platform where I hit my head, of course. A tub of water was shoved towards me, and a hard hat was thrown in, and a bar of soap, and they said, strip and bathe. And I thought, urinating in front of them in the hole was traumatizing and dehumanizing. This was worse. Every time I think this is as bad as it gets worse. And I said, I'm fine, I'm good. I have some scratches, but that's okay. I'll just wash, my hands, my face, or whatever. At this point, they were like, absolutely not. The boss said that you need to clean yourself because you have some injury. And again, for now, we need to keep you alive. When they started ripping my clothes off, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I remember getting into the tiniest ball that I could, and trying to remove my clothes, stupidly thinking they would not leak, but of course they did, and I could feel their eyes on me. And I did what they asked, and I asked for a towel. And they threw this really old cloth. I have to say cloth, not another towel. I tried to wrap myself to hide, and it was so tiny I couldn't hide anything. And they just shoved me into like a little shack, a room in the shack, and they locked the door, and they were discussing outside. What I did not know is that they had gone to make that first ransom call to my husband. And because he did not have $2 million lying around, just waiting to give to them, I was their punching bag. So a lot of expletives were used. They came back into the room, shoved me into another room, which was more like a bedroom. And I was given somebody else's clothes to wear, and I was handcuffed to the bedpost. And he was ranting and raving about how rude my husband was. and he does not care about you. Otherwise, he would have paid. And so everything was basically awful. And I have strong reason to believe that the abduction was motivated by two factors. One was political, one was racial. So he said, okay, it's still officially your birthday, so here's your birthday present. Not so nice language. And he threw a bottle of baby oil at me, and I started screaming and whatever. He beat the heck out of me while I'm still handcuffed. At that time, it was my left hand. He stripped me, stripped himself, and I was sexually assaulted in every possible way, leaving trails of blood that bad. And of course, again, this is like worst nightmare ever. When he was done, choking, there was so much choking. I passed out once or twice, regained consciousness, and he was still doing what he was doing. And then he just very casually walked out of the room and said, go wash, to remove DNA evidence, of course. I had no choice. I was grabbed by my neck and shoved outside to do that, and I did. Came back in. He put the clothing back on me, and I curled up in a corner, but no. And when he was done, he said, happy birthday, Mrs. Ali. Then proceeded to lay down next to me and pull me, as though we're cuddling. He forced my head on his chest and forced me to be close to him physically. I had no choice, because if I didn't, he would just grab the back of my neck and just like shove me, right? So I'm lying there and I'm like, I'm numb. I'm totally numb. And the only word that could come to mind is, Lord, why? Like, Lord, why? Because that was my ultimate worst nightmare scenario. I just played out. Later on in the morning, closer to very early morning period, another vehicle pulled up. I was, masked again and thrown into that vehicle. And that vehicle took me to another location, and that's where I stayed for the next 13 days with an individual I referred to as the keeper. He was supposed to take care of me for the duration of the negotiation for the ransom. That was another very shabby, like a shack. But when he got me, this was a huge guy. This was like definitely at least 6'5", but his build was very, very stocky. So he was like super, super strong, right? And he grabbed me by the neck and carried me inside by the neck whilst I started crying again somehow. And he had these chains, dog chains, on a pulley of some sort. And he strung me up by my hands. So I was like, this way, hanging, and left me there for a while. Slapped me around and warned me if I made a sound, he would kill me or his pit bull would kill me. Because there was a dog nearby that he had a lot of control over. All I could do was cry. And he said, okay, I will do it as tight, okay? Tell me when it's okay, because I need to keep you alive. So essentially, I was a package that needed to remain in good condition in order to be exchanged for money. He did it, and then he took me inside on a small mattress and handcuffed on the right, tie straps on my feet. By the next day, my feet were completely numb. I'm sure they would have been blue-black. There was no feeling. Now, that was the morning of the 6th. And he came back in and he saw me curled up in a little ball, and he started, ranting and raving, thinking I was trying to escape. All I could do was shake my head no. And he proceeded to sexually assault me. I fought, just kind of flipped me over, and I told him I was cold, and he said, oh, you're cold? Okay, I'll warm you up. I'll get you warm. And he flipped me over, stripped me, assaulted me again. I was bleeding even more by now. And of course, sorely traumatized, because for every scream, I was choked until I was on the verge of passing out. I did pass out a few times. And then he just casually put my clothes back on. So I'm curled up in a ball again, and I could barely breathe. So I just kind of did this to the part of the mask. And I guess he saw, and he said, I told you don't touch that. And I begged, I said, I couldn't breathe. I can't breathe properly. And I was assaulted again because I touched the mask. By now, there's blood running down my leg, and I was told to wash. And I was slapped around a bit because of the mess. And and then I was handcuffed, and I remained there just totally in my thoughts. I stewed in my thoughts, literally waiting to die. I was waiting to die. And I was wondering, this was what was going through my head. Okay, is it going to be a bullet to the head? Are they going to chop me up in pieces? Are they going to slice my throat? Are they, so every time he would enter the room or enter the shack, that was obvious. I'd be like, okay, now, it's now. And I'd be like, okay, Lord, I'm ready. This is it. But I'd be secretly wondering, oh gosh, please let it be quick. I've been through enough. Let it be quick. And it didn't, the murder didn't come. And so every time he would be around, I'd be setting myself up for these panic attacks as to, okay, is it now? And how is he going to do it? Is he going to rape me again? Or is he going to just kill me or what? Because I knew we did not have $2 million. There's no way, right? What kept me going were thoughts of my children, their faces, the little baby hairs they still had at the back of their neck, the smell, the baby smell. The keeper tried to get me to eat every single day. He tried, just take a bite, just take one bite of the sandwich, no more, just one bite. I'd take that little tiny bite and I'd throw up. So sorely dehydrated and stuff. But nothing would stay down. All I could think of was I want my family. I want to be home. What I was not ready for was the very drastic change that took place in this man who confessed to me that he was a murderer, that he grew up killing. Now, it could have been a lie, but I later found out that he actually was a murderer, the entire group. And he could have very easily killed me. And one night I just began praying and I just kind of gave up and I surrendered to God and I said, listen, I don't know what I did to deserve this. I haven't hurt anyone intentionally. I have not, gone against your will, etc., etc. I scanned my entire life for things that I did that made me deserve it. And I couldn't find anything that would make me deserving of this. But I surrendered it to him. And I kid you not, the next day, this man he made a 180-degree turn. He was entirely different. He was gentle with me. He was kind to me. He spoke softly to me. He stopped hitting me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so he's just, he's trying to coax me into eating. And so he's trying to be nice. There's a technique. But later on, I realized that it was a genuine change. And if he wanted to learn about me. And long story short, I was given a basin to use as my toilet. At that point, nothing was dehumanizing to me anymore. I was allowed a total of two baths within the 14 days. I was allowed to brush my teeth only maybe 3 times or 4 times at the most. I was filthy and I'm not used to being that way. I did not care. I was like, okay, kill me. Lord, just please make this man kill me now. Kill me now. I don't care how. He didn't. He became very protective of me. He started talking with me and realized that the way he was grown, the way he was raised, hating individuals of my race and of my religion, it was very misconstrued. And then he realized, he told me, said, Mrs. Ali, the way I thought of you was very incorrect. He apologized for assaulting me. He apologized for hurting me. And I mean, apologies that were tearful. He was crying and apologizing to me and begging me for forgiveness. And in our conversations, I would talk about my husband, my children. I've talked about Jesus a lot, and he was very, very curious about that, my faith. And I taught him as much as I could about Jesus. And I always tell people, it wasn't me. I was like, someone in that situation would not be forgiving this person who committed so many atrocities against you, right? It was not me, I always say. It was God. Had to have been. And I genuinely forgave him. I genuinely accepted his apologies. And then he promised me, he said, from now on, nobody's going to hurt you. Even if these guys, meaning his cohorts, I assume, came to kill me, he would not allow them to kill me. They would have to kill him first. Then he asked if he could be my friend. And I said, yeah. I don't know why. Again, everything was I don't know why. It was not me. It was something in me. And when I said yes, he asked if he could have this, which was the scapula. I never take this off. It's on me all the time. Now they'd taken everything of value from me. So this is of no real monetary value. That's what $5. He's, can I have that, please? And I'm like, why? It's not valuable. He said if he has it, every time he looks at it, he will know that he can change, he can ask for forgiveness, and he can have a new life, and he will remember me. And he did not take it. He could have taken it. He asked me for it, so I gave it to him. In any event, that was the way it was. And one day he came in and he said he was going to set me free. He uncuffed me, untied the straps, everything. She said, just try to average around 20 minutes and then just run like hell. Of course, in my weakened state, even if I wanted to, I could not have done that. But whatever he did, and when he came back, he was so mad. He was like throwing things around and, why did you go? I cleared the way for you to safely be free. Did not go. And I was like, well, Jesus did not come to the earth to condemn. If I leave, they will kill you. And he was like, and I'm a murderer. I deserve to die. Well, he did not come to condemn. He came to save. And I do not want your blood on my hand. And I stayed put. And he was mad. He was really mad. He refused to handcuff me, but I forced him to just cuff it very loosely, just in case his people came around. And he did. And at one point I gave up. And 2 days later, I believe I died. I felt like I was drifting off into sleep. That's what it feels like. And I was out of my body. I saw my body. I was like, oh crap, I'm dead. Am I dead? I can't be there and I can't be here. And I'm looking and I'm not seeing my heart. In any event, I was returned to my body and I was completely at peace. I knew that I would be released. Then the very next night, they collected the money and I was released. He said goodbye to me. He gave me back my own phone, which has never been heard of, okay? He said, listen, as we drop you off, wherever we drop you off, don't say a word, count to 10, remove your mask, call your husband. So said, so done. They dropped me off in some unknown area, pulled off the mask, could see nothing because my eyes were infected, my scalp was infected, ears were infected, everything was infected. So I tried to, feel my way through the phone, dialed a couple wrong numbers. Eventually I got my husband, and I tell you, it was unlike any feeling I've ever had. Just to hear his voice, just to hear, like, I'm home. I felt he's home, So when I heard his voice, it was like, be okay now, And I couldn't see very much, but I gave them certain clues, and the police were able to find me, and they bagged. There's no more fitting phrase than this. They bagged and tagged me like an object at a crime scene. White suit, everything. Took me to the hospital for forensic purposes, which was, and I'll be honest, sometimes I wonder which was worse, the examination or the sexual assault. It was so dehumanizing because these were not criminals. These were doctors, nurses, police officers, Scotland Yard detectives, and still I'm lying there like a slab of meat and everybody's poking, prodding. Eventually my husband got to me and he held on to me, and I swear to God, I was like never gonna let go. I wanted more than anything to see my kids and to see my mom, who I knew was praying for me, but I was not in any condition yet. And, what was miraculous was in the aftermath, they could find no trace of any STD, no trace of HIV. They could not find most, if not all, of the bruises that were on my body. Having been beaten the way I was, there would have been bruises. And so when I was giving my statement, they were like, but we did not see evidence of those bruises. And at first they thought I was lying. But something happened in heaven that I knew removed all of that. Like I said, that's another story. Because when I went in, the doctors told me up front, Debbie, you've been gone for 2 weeks. These are men who are all over. The likelihood of you having contracted some form of STD or worst of all HIV is 98%. And I was strangely not afraid. And after a period of 6 months of testing, everything came back negative, and they were like, how? Like, they were baffled. The day after I was released, I started speaking out, advocating for women. Women needed to start coming out and telling their stories. Why? Because it's considered taboo, saying these kinds of things. There were many people in my family, relatives, close friends who were like, Debbie, let this go. And I was like, no. If I let it go, who is going to say what needs to be said? Who is going to give the statistics of how many women are assaulted who are dealing with trauma? And what we forget is, I'm one woman. What about the trauma my kids suffer? And they still suffer. They are young adults and they still suffer. Something weird comes on TV, my daughter turns it off. She doesn't even ask me, she just turns it off. It's like, Mom, don't look at that, don't look at that. Let's think about something else. Let's talk about Gilmore Girls. Let's talk about, immediately. If I leave the house for 5 minutes, my son has, where are you? Okay, how far are you away from home? What time are you coming back? If that time hits and I'm not back, okay, what's keeping you? Should I come? They're grown adults and they still the truck tie. My husband has never gotten over this and never will. Our marriage has never been the same and will never be the same. I remember when I told him I was assaulted. He's a strong man. And his line of work, which I don't want to reveal for privacy purposes, his line of work is to keep a clear head, regardless. I've never seen him weak, not once. When I told him I was assaulted, he fell to his knees. He almost passed out. Just that I would encourage people to get a copy of the book, because it really gets into the nitty-gritty of some of the techniques I use, how I was able to survive. It gets into the death experience as well, because I know a lot of people, some will be skeptical, and there are others who would want to get into that a little bit more. That is very detailed in the book as well. So I've done many speaking engagements, hundreds, about the incident, about the trauma, about the death experience, and about personal safety. For those of you out there who are listening, personal safety is not to be taken lightly, especially not in today's world. We do things, simple things, and we are unaware of the dangers that exist. And we are unaware of that we're putting ourselves at risk, and we're not even aware of it. And this is something else that I teach. There's an actual personal safety program I've developed, and a book that is coming that goes with it, where you learn how to protect your household, where you learn techniques you can teach your kids to keep themselves safe, where you learn about how to keep yourself safe, especially as a woman,